And hello and welcome to another episode on Ohana Hobby Workshop. You're joined by myself, Magnus Smasher, and today we're going to be doing something a bit different. We're going to be carrying on with the series, and we're going to be talking about what it's like to own a large army. So when I say large army, for myself, it's my Nighthaunt. It has over 1,000 miniatures. I think at the minute the total is around about 1,200 miniatures, something like that. It's around about 20,000 points. That's one of the large armies I own. And I get a lot of questions like, why do I do these sort of projects? Why do I have these large armies? As you can see, we've got some armies behind me, as well as more stuff in boxes we need to sort out. And the reason, so let's dive into it a bit deeper. So the reason I do these large armies is because I've always liked the idea of having large battles, whether it's via ghosts or night or whatever it is, and just large armies on the table, rolling dice for a few hours or maybe 10, 20, however long it takes to do a game. But having these large armies and having a laugh with people, and that's the main thing. So like, I haven't been able to play very big games at the minute. Haven't played in a while, but obviously with the new rule, with other rules and all that sort of gimmicks in it, with the game systems, large games can be quite daunting because of obviously time and all of that sort of stuff. And that's the main thing, is about having the time. So the last major game I played was going back 2-3 years ago now, and that was my Thousand Suns versus Imperial Guard. It was around about 20,000 points on the table. I had around 10 myself, and something like that. Was a ridiculous amount of points. And that was the first proper big game I had, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And for me, the large games I see more of a benefit to, because then you're not tied down to, oh, I can only take this and this list, but I want to take this, but I want to take this as well. With the larger games and larger armies, you can essentially take what you like. You're not tied. I do also a lot of open play because obviously the size of the armies we play here on the channel, where there'll be upwards of 1,000 miniatures plus just for one person. So we'll continue with the Nighthaunt for this one primarily, because it is the easiest one to just go through. So with the Nighthaunt, there's 1,000 chain rasps alone without any of the other units. So there's Banshees, there's the Gornstar Stalkers. You've got the Reapers, you've got a load of the characters. So if I was to take that in a standard game, like you could only take 3 of one war scroll, and for me that's not ideal. I prefer to have my armies out where I can play them all at large games, like large games, big games, like high stakes. So we do a lot of custom stuff here as well, custom rules, and we're doing campaigns with these larger armies. And at the same time, we've also got to be very cautious of them, because from a gaming perspective, we have to think of easier ways to move stuff. So, for example, with the chain rasps, I have them all on movement trays just to make the movement phase a bit easier. And then essentially, when they get into combat or get charged, we take them out of the trays as best as we can, pop them down, charged in. And then we do the same. Then once the combat's over with, if they've won, they go back in the tray. But even if they don't win, they go back in the tray, ready to be put back on the shelving. So there's a lot of things like that you can do to really help. It helps me out a lot as well, just with the sheer size of the armies I do. And one of the things as well, when it comes to these large armies, is also like we spoke about, like the movement. It can be a bit of a nightmare because you're having to move constantly, same miniatures, and it can be awkward. Like the larger the games, the more awkward phases become. So for like an example, for when we do like charges or shooting or attacks, we would roll all of the dice for that unit, or all the units across the board, then go bench essentially backwards and forwards, as long as we remember the weapon profiles and everything, and all that sort of stuff. But for myself, Having these large armies is a massive impact because for me it shows it shows like achievement and all that sort of stuff. So like, I did used to do a lot of gaming, but I never saw any self value out of that anymore. So I took that was essentially after that, and that's why I took this hobby so large over the past 4 years. Doing these large armies like my Nighthaunt, my Stormcast, my Thousand Suns, all of that sort of stuff. And for me, it's a self achievement. Seeing it all, as you guys can see, you can only see some of it on the screen at the minute. We will be getting a lot more out, but seeing it all on the show shows me like self worth, self appreciation, and sort of like self achievement. As I hope there are other people like that as well out there, where seeing their models or whatever it is in the cabinet, whether it's a collection, seeing it on like show out and about, you can see that you've actually got something, and it makes you feel better. So like when I come into this room and I see the armies, I'm instantly smiling. I'm like, yeah, I've done that. Like I can do more. Let's do this. And that's one of the things that keeps me going as well, is seeing armies just constantly being done. Loads of it's in different work stages as well. So I never always work on the same thing. And that's also a bonus of these large armies I do. I don't have to worry about, you know what, I've got to paint a unit of 10 Marines after. Because I have these larger armies, I can go, okay, well, I don't want to paint these Marines today. Let's move on to, I don't know, some Chain Rasps, or move on to Sequid, or whatever it is. I have these large armies with multiple miniatures, hundreds and thousands. And it's one of those things for me where I can just dob about, keep bouncing between armies, keeping it all new, always working on different things, keeping it going. That's one thing that also helps me boost momentum, and also so I don't hit that hobby wall essentially, because I've hit the hobby wall a couple of times and I struggle to get back onto the brush. Whereas now, if I feel myself getting a bit like sort of, say for example, I'm painting a load of these guys up, so the Kings of War dictators from Basilians. Say for example, I don't know, I have, even though they're a character model, say I have like 10 of them I do. I'm not, if I start hitting that wall like halfway through, I'm not going to want to paint them for a while. So I'll put it on the side and go, okay, why don't now I've got some stuff by the side of me. I know I don't really want to paint that anymore. Let's move on to a Swamp Hydra from Epic Encounters. So I can then go, okay, let's paint a bit of that, or I can move on to some Tzeentch stuff, or having these large armies and large projects, even just having small projects and small armies. That is also like another really good thing about just the hobby in general, because you can work on one thing, say I don't want to do that anymore, like sort of thing, and then move on to something else. But one of the things that I do is I at least get, say I'm working on a 10-man unit of Tactical Marines, or Primaris Marine, or whatever it is, like a 10-man unit or minimum unit. I would get them in a tabletop and then go, right, okay, I'm now going to move on to the next thing. And that's how I do it. Then I go back and do all the details and stuff later. And that's one thing that a lot of people, and I know a few people like that, actually myself included, where we essentially paint up armies to a tabletop. From tabletop, we move on, and essentially we just go from there and start really pushing it out more, doing more and more things, whether it's from learning new techniques, and just having spare models. So as you can imagine, I have a lot of spare parts so I can test things on, from arms to armors and all that sort of stuff. And that's one thing for me that the doing these big armies does, is it's not just the armies itself, but it's also the bits. So then it opens up more windows of opportunity with conversions, making stuff that's unique, something that's more my sort of style, all of that sort of stuff. And that's the main thing as well, making the hobby your own, and basically going from there. And like, you shouldn't be afraid to like do a head swap or just do a simple conversion, even if you want to go full blown, rip the model to shreds, take both arms off, repose it, all that sort of stuff. That's still great to do that sort of stuff, because it gives you something new. And that's the one thing also in this hobby, is there's a lot of imagination that goes into it essentially, and a lot of time and a lot of effort, blood, sweat and tears, all that sort of shenanigans. And I think for myself, that's why I do these large armies in general. There's just so much more to do. But yeah, so that's sort of that's this episode now done with. So this was essentially focusing on why I do the large armies and going from there really, and like what it means to me and all that sort of stuff. So we will see everyone on the next episode of Ohana Hobby Workshop.